This is In the Middle with Josh and Sarah Siders. We get it. You're probably going through something that's asking you to dig deep, think differently, and hold on against the odds.
So these are our thoughts about starting new things, shutting some things down, and being with you, right there in the middle.
Welcome back to In the Middle, the podcast for all of us who haven't arrived yet. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Josh. Really great to have you again.
Yeah, so today we're talking about why it's so hard to be in the middle, wherever that is. Like, so maybe it's midlife, but it's also just like in the middle of a situation that is not resolved.
Yeah,
In the
you
middle
are.
of something.
Yeah, you're going through something.
Yeah.
And, we get it. You get it?
Yes.
I get it.
I mean, I so get
I've
it.
been, it's like, which thing
Which-
am I in the middle of? There's been endless numbers of
Yeah.
them.
Uh-huh.
There's plenty of choices now. You feel that?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I always feel like in certain seasons of life, like I'm waiting more maybe for something.
That's
Like
true.
I'm more in the middle of something. Like maybe there's just more intensity. Like the last year and a half where I was trying to figure out what I was, where my career was going
Right.
and like
What's
how much
next?
control I had in that.
And you're in this holding pattern.
Yeah.
Kind of waiting. You're trying to end well. You're trying to start well, and you don't have definite dates on any of those things.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, I was able to be like very creative and there was a lot of like fun things that happened from it, but
Yeah.
it was definitely stressful because it was so like it always felt like everything was month to month or like week to week.
Right.
And it was like that for, I don't know, year and a half, I think,
right.
basically. Or maybe 2 years. I don't know.
It was
It
a
was
while.
so
It
long.
was a minute.
It was
Well, and
so
I
long.
think about even just parenting.
Oh,
There
yeah.
are just seasons where you're in the middle of it. You are,
Yeah.
raising a couple babies,
Yeah, babies.
right?
Babies.
And
Oh, yeah.
you get one out of diapers, and then the other's in,
Yep.
and
Yep. Get the
you just
string, the diaper parade.
yeah, and you're trying to spin up, a career and strengthen your marriage and have friends
Yeah.
and do all the like you're just
Start your business, your organization, or like you said, your career.
absolutely.
That's like
And
your 30s. I feel like that's so much of like
it
what you
could
do in your
be,
30s, like
yeah.
20s and 30s.
But specifically like with kids, it's just they're great and
Yeah.
you love them,
Yeah.
but you like the midnight feedings and up early
Mhm.
and like you kind of feel like you're passing ships with your spouse, like,
Yeah.
hey, you're doing great, keep going,
High
right?
five you on the
Exactly.
way.
So
Yeah.
it just feels like just in the middle of it,
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, so you are in the middle, but then like I think part of it is like when are you not? Like
right.
when is it over? Because it's like that to me when the question that we're talking about today is like why is it so hard? Then another question is like, well, when are you done?
Right.
And it's like if you can answer that,
Yeah.
then like that it's like, well, when I'm done, it's almost like because you're never done, that's why it's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. There's always a new, S curve to initiate.
Yeah.
There's always
a new S curve.
There's something to like, you have new dreams, new visions, new seasons of life. You're like, okay, let's do this now. And
Yeah.
let's, invest here or have this game plan. And yeah.
Or just having no game plan and feeling like you're in survival mode. I mean, like when you have a new business or a new baby or like a new job, I mean, just anything new, like you're moving, you are in survival mode. Like you're like, I don't have a strategy. My strategy is eat food today.
Yeah.
And
make sure everyone else around me has access.
Yeah. Yeah. Are the clothes clean? I don't know. Mostly I'm just trying to make sure they're not dirty. Like obviously dirty, like
smelly,
yeah.
obvious stains.
Yeah, smelly. Oh my gosh.
That is that's a metaphor for life right there.
It really is. Yeah. So I mean, I think being in the middle, like for me, if I think about why is it so hard, it's this feeling that it's I guess it's just like the lack of resolve. Like you want there to be a period on the end of a sentence. You want to know the answer, the outcome. You want to know like, is everything I'm doing worth it? Right? Like, is the result, can I see the ROI on this? Right? Like if you're thinking about parenting a teenager, you really kind of know that your outcome is them as an adult and ultimately You don't have a lot of say over any of that. And their life is going to take a bunch of twists and turns
Yeah.
that are on them. And they don't really have per se like a reflection on you. And so it's like I think you're really kind of in the middle of like letting go.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know what you're in the middle of. Like if I was
Right.
like, I'm
Yeah.
raising a teenager and a tweenager right now, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm in the middle of raising the teen, getting them into adulthood. And like I think that when they're in adulthood that I'm done. It's like, no, you're
Yeah.
not done.
I don't want to
Your
be.
relationship
Yeah.
is changing with them. And you are letting go slowly over time, and that's what you're in the middle of. Like, I mean, I'm like having this aha moment right now as I'm talking because I'm like, oh, that's what this is.
Mm,
This is them, differentiating and becoming their own person. And if I think I'm in the middle of parenting a teen
yeah.
and then I'm done,
Yeah.
or it's resolved when they're what, 19 and they leave my
Yeah.
house, they're still a teenager.
Right.
Like when are you done? I mean, I think so much of that feeling is like there's this expectation that you will get resolve,
Yeah.
you will get
Yeah.
an answer, you will get a worthy outcome, and you can assess.
Hmm.
And it's like, nope, I actually don't think any of that is real. I think that's like American productivity.
Interesting. So you would say, let me just back up.
Yeah.
You would say two things to start. It would be the lack of resolve and sometimes not even knowing that you're in the middle of something. That's why being in the middle is so hard.
Lack of result. Yeah, you don't know what you're in the middle of. It's not that you
Right.
don't know. You think you're like, oh, I can tell I don't have resolve, therefore I'm in the middle of
Like,
it.
where's the midpoint anyway? Is that
You don't
the
know.
beginning of being in the
Yeah.
middle? At the end of, yeah. No, yeah.
Because you have no idea what the duration is. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously you
Yep.
know like,
Yep.
okay, he's gonna turn 20, but it's like what is he gonna be? Is he gonna be in college? Is he gonna be working? Is he gonna be overseas? Like, is
Mhm.
he gonna yeah, I don't know what John or James will be doing at that
Right.
point. And so it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have like a moment to go, okay, you know, so slap your hands together. I'm done. Like, buena suerte, good luck in the world.
Right. Right.
You're just like um always like reassessing
Yeah.
and
That's
and
good.
you know
So
anyway.
how about like career, or just like
Jeez.
personal growth, like being in the middle of a hard time. Um,
Yeah.
how would you say that's related to like a job situation or like you just kind of feel like, I don't know, things are closing in and you're in the middle of just hanging on, like,
I mean, personal stuff almost always is interpersonal, right? Like,
right.
I mean, I remember when I was going through postpartum anxiety and depression, like it wasn't anything anyone was doing or, in my life that was causing that. That was my own like personal hell. Uh, and it was like the world was scary and I had a baby and my hormones, but like really it wasn't, there's are situations like that. And that was very, very challenging. And it was like, am I going to be, is this my new normal? I think that's one of the big questions you ask when you're in the middle of something is like,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this my new normal? Like if you
It's
get
how it is. Yeah.
is if you have a relationship change with your kid and you're like, oh my gosh, is this how it is now? Or like you get a new boss or you have, something happen or you get a health diagnosis, like,
Right.
or even just like an injury. I remember when I injured my shoulder a couple of years ago and I was like, oh, is this
Yeah.
my new
Right.
normal?
Just
Like, and you
live with it.
probably aren't, that's probably not your new normal, but the older you get, the more you're like, this might be.
This might be.
This might be like just a sucky thing that happens now, where if I do this and this, then I
Yeah.
throw out my neck, or
Well, and the hard thing is like life is not like a bad movie that you can just decide to stop watching. And
right,
it's not like, your playlist on Spotify. It's like, oh, I'm tired of that song. Next.
yeah,
It's like you keep going. And I mean, there are ways where you can check out,
yeah,
right? You can overconsume substances or things or
behavior,
you
or
can
just being,
grow apathetic. You can, metaphorically hit next or pause or whatever. But the reality is, like, for most people that are trying to, carry on, improve themselves, improve the lives of others, like, this is inevitable.
yeah,
This is coming for all of us. There are some valleys are deeper than
yeah,
others. You never know which it's going to be.
yeah,
Really, most of the time, I would say you don't know which one's going to be deeper than the others, and you have to keep going. You have to keep
Uh,
one foot moving in front of the other. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you
So,
do. Yeah.
yeah, I would say for me, the hardest thing that I've experienced about being in the middle, two things actually, and one's kind of related. It's the confusion, which sort of relates to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You don't know. Um, and then the misunderstanding,
Yeah.
um, of like people's expectation of you and things like that. So I would say the confusion, yeah, of what is going on. I thought I was past this. I thought I've
Oh my
already
gosh.
gone through something like
Oh my
this.
gosh. Totally. I
I
checked
thought,
that box.
I thought I'm too way too old for this,
Yes.
to keep making these mistakes or,
Yes.
running my,
Too old for this.
stubbing my toe like this,
Yeah.
whatever it is. So it's confusing.
Yeah.
And you're looking, a lot of times we play the blame game because it triggers shame, right? A lot of times it triggers shame.
Yeah.
Like I'm upset that I'm going through this. And you look for things to blame. Circumstances, it's the
Mhm.
government's fault, or it's, my neighbor's fault, or it's my fault. We're just trying to like hide our shame
Mhm.
and cope
Yep.
with how hard it is and the confusion of what is going on, when will this end? So that
Yeah.
is tough.
Confusion.
I mean, I've had several seasons of this. Like, why are the things that used to work no longer working?
Totally.
What is going on? Like, buy the course, read the book, listen to the podcast,
Go on the diet.
go on the diet,
Yeah.
take the trip.
Freaking.
Why is this not working
Yep.
anymore? So there have been varying degrees of just that. And then secondly, the misunderstanding,
Mhm.
that we tend to forget that everyone's an unfinished product,
Yeah.
and having people treat you a certain way
Hmm.
because you don't measure up in that season of life to what they expected. Maybe you even overpromised, underdelivered, right? Maybe you didn't come through the way you wanted to or expected to, but it's that kind of judgment.
Yeah.
And I would even say condemnation that you feel like that people are judging you
Yeah.
in that moment of life. Like your life is not Instagrammable right now. And you feel dismissed, you feel
Yeah.
belittled, you feel, whatever. I know the popular sentiment is just tune out the haters, shake them off, tune them out. And that's true. Like you need like, internal fortitude to
Yeah.
keep going.
If they're in the YouTube comments section,
Right.
if they're your like family.
But family,
Yeah.
friends, coworkers, all that, like only sociopaths can like completely tune people out because they don't have the moral compass, right? Like if you're in relationship with people, it's going to affect you.
Yeah.
It's, the holiday dinners. So how's your job? How's your life? Like it's just triggering. And you could have a supportive family and still feel like, wow, everybody else is doing differently, better,
Yep.
way ahead of where I am.
Yep.
And so I think the misunderstanding, even from people that maybe once were supportive, like people are so fickle, right?
Mhm.
And especially nowadays where social media, you have so many more, instead of fans, or friends, you have fans and followers that are pretty, like there's plenty of options for people just to kind of drop you and move on to the next person. And that's like,
True.
like, that is brand new in the history of the human experience. We are not used to being dropped so quickly, like celebrated one moment and then abandoned in the next. And so, yeah, again, the misunderstanding of just feeling what happened to that person. They dropped off. Ooh, they must have really screwed up. And the reality is you maybe took a risk.
Yeah.
Maybe you just grew to a point of like you outgrew your old self or condition and it was time for a change.
Yeah.
And you're experiencing the dip. You're experiencing this is a new thing that I'm trying and not everything is up and to the right. And so I would say that that misunderstanding really hits hard. And yeah, so I'm curious, um, what would you say to somebody experiencing, one or all of those four things? And there's probably half a dozen others that we could sit and brainstorm over, but if there's someone going through, the confusion, misunderstanding, the, feeling lost, or like, when is this going to
Mm,
end? Or when is this resolving, or
yeah.
what's going on? What would you tell somebody?
I mean, honestly, like the biggest adjustment I needed to make is the expectation that it will resolve.
Yeah.
That like,
Yeah.
and now my child has graduated, and now I have this job that I wanted to have a job, and I wanted to make sure it was, secure situation. And now I have a job, or like, and now we moved into this new house, and now we started my business. It's like, okay, well, now you just introduced a bunch of new chaos, a bunch of new questions. How is your child going to do as an adult? What is your new job going to be like? What is your new house going to be like? Um, you go from like you have a moment of an answer, and then introduce a bunch of new questions, a bunch of new uncertainties and variables. And so the expectation that you're going to feel secure, that you're going to be like, oh, I have all this stuff locked down, right? Like I have all these um, answers. I have security. I have financial stability. My relationships are all mostly secure or intact. My health is intact. It's like, if that ever happens to you, that will be a moment.
Mm.
It'll be a second, and open a bottle of champagne and celebrate it right then, because
Yeah.
that's it. That's all you get. Like you got that job, graduated your kid from college, you celebrate. That's why we celebrate a moment. It's like
Yeah.
it's a milestone, it's an achievement, but you walk right through the threshold
Yeah.
into new uncertainties.
Yeah.
And so if you have an expectation that you will feel secure and that you can remove uncertainties from your life, you will be miserable.
Mm.
And I was miserable. I thought that it was going to eventually resolve,
Mhm.
and it just was like unraveling. And I don't know. It's like, yeah, that's midlife. That was me making a bunch of different career pivots and
Mhm.
getting involved in the community. And these things that, were exciting and they looked really cool at first, but then and I mean, they were great, but they were also like super scary and intimidating and like
Yeah.
outside of my scope of competence at the time. And so it was like introducing these cool new things was introducing a ton of uncertainty
Right.
the whole time. And even now, starting my business back up, it's like I have a totally different focus, a totally different model and
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah.
And I'm having to do that. And again, dealing with my own expectations. Oh,
Right.
I
Right.
thought this would go faster. Oh, I thought
Right.
this would be different. Oh, I thought, and it's like, there you go.
Yeah.
There's your source of suffering,
Yeah.
is the expectation. So that's for me. I would just be like, check your expectations and see if they're valid. Can
Right.
you bank on them?
Right.
Because if you can't, if no one is out there promising that, like that's not the product like guarantee for your life that you can just expect,
Mhm.
then you might need to adjust your
Yeah.
expectations
Yeah.
to help um your mental health.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
What
good.
about you?
I would say a couple things. First, I would say take heart,
Mm,
because if you look at anyone who has done something meaningful,
hmm.
there has been a valley moment
Yeah.
that and they were probably dismissed. They were
Yeah.
probably, people said they're done, that it's over for them. Maybe they thought that
Mhm.
about themselves.
Yeah.
But it's a part of the journey that we all go on, that we rise from the ashes, we have a rebirth. Like, people, I'm sure, counted Jesus out, right? Like, not everybody might
Yeah.
be, a
Yeah.
Christian that watches or listens to this, but
Yeah. True.
people counted Jesus out. His disciples, like, they went home.
They
They're
went
like,
back
he's
to
done,
fishing. Right.
right?
Yeah.
But Jesus didn't count Jesus out, right? He knew exactly what he was doing.
Interesting. Yeah.
And on the third day, he rose again and accomplished the mission. So, yeah, I just say, take heart. Like, this is a part of the plan. Like,
Dude.
when you're in the middle of it and it's hard and you're confused and you're lonely, like, that's like, take heart that everybody
Mm.
goes through this, that does something meaningful.
And that's kind of connects. I'm hearing like connection, like expectation, like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
expect that the
Expect it.
challenge is part of it, as opposed
Yeah.
to expect.
I mean, here's the deal. I read an author, who just a sentence changed my perspective.
Whoa.
It's one of those moments. I don't exactly know what he said, but I think it was John Eldridge actually
Hmm.
writing about like, men and boys becoming men. And the reality is like men are wired to be warriors. That's one of the archetypes, right?
Mm.
So if you're a warrior, if you're the training is the everyday life stuff that's hard.
Mm.
Like expect that it's going to be hard because if you're a warrior and you are, if you're male, and I think there's some feminine archetype in there too.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
But there should be you should be expect like this is hard day after day because this is what keeps you fit for battle.
Ooh.
And I'm like, okay, that's
Wow.
yeah, okay. I needed to
Really?
hear that like 10 years ago, but yeah,
Wow.
so expect it.
Huh.
So I'd say,
So
yeah,
good.
expectations. That's
Yep.
really, really good. Um, I would say, secondly, like look for the voices of encouragement,
Hmm.
not fanboys and girls, not
Yep.
people that are so impressed they just agree or whatever. I'm talking to people that know you, people
Yep.
that know your dark side, your shadow side, but they've got your back. Like they'll cheer for you,
Yep.
Might be a mentor, might even be a therapist. I mean, if you're really alone, you might have to hire some professional help to just speak life into you,
Yeah.
hopefully it's a pastor, hopefully it's a spiritual director, but yeah, get that encouragement where you can. And tune out as much as the other noise you can, and then actually one more. So I've read that there was a general in World War II. He might have been one of the bad guys. I don't know. So I might not, don't buy into all the
Oh
his
my God.
worldview.
Where did I
But
quote you?
he was in the desert.
Okay.
He had this tank regiment in the desert. And the desert, it's all the same, right? So
Mm.
they're holding the desert. They have to go from one side to the other. All this stuff
Hmm.
all looks the same. Like lowered morale. Men wanted to give up. So what he did was he would send scouts ahead of the tank column and drop like oil cans or flags or little things along the way so that the men knew that they were taking ground little by little. They knew it wasn't just the same thing, same scenery day after day. They actually had things that they go, okay, look, we're
The
making
milestones.
progress.
Yeah.
So I would say for whatever that is, you might not be able to control a whole lot externally,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it may feel like, well, I just want to give up since I'm out of control. I can't control anything. But that's not completely true. What
Yeah.
you can do is control yourself. You
Yep.
can set up maybe mini goals. Maybe it's getting back to the gym. Maybe it's redoing, your yoga regime. Maybe it's finishing a book you've been page by page, but just little goals that help you realize like, I don't know when my life is gonna progress and I'm gonna get out of this, but in the midst of it, I can set up I wouldn't say new year, new me in the midst of, I mean, maybe, but I think
Right.
that's too big. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times because it takes so much mental, emotional energy to hang on, it's actually the little wins that help keep you going one step at a time.
Yeah.
So it could be, like I said, finish a book, maybe take a course, maybe improve your diet, exercise, nutrition, whatever, little steps at a time. But those are the things that add up, and they may be the things that help like get you out on the other side. Find that
Yeah.
final kind of push.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. That's so good. I mean, because it's like the desert has an edge, right? Like
Well,
there's an
yeah,
end. It has an end, but like you don't know.
I'll
And
say
then
this,
maybe the
like I
mountains. That's
I was
beautiful.
going through some stuff last 18 months, 24 months, and it was like it was unrelenting.
Yeah.
The external pressure, it was when I chose to finally get into therapy
Yeah.
and, you know, uh in the midst of it, I really wanted to clean up my nutrition and exercise,
Mm.
get on a lifting program, set some goals, some minor goals, but some goals nevertheless. And in the beginning, like I was doing all the right things: enough sleep, nutrition,
Yeah.
exercise. Weight wouldn't budge. Couldn't see any new muscle poking out, and it probably had a
Wow.
lot to do with like elevated cortisol and a lot of stuff. But
Yeah.
it was like I was doing the right things,
Mm.
and I felt better mentally and
Mm.
physically, even if I couldn't see it.
Mm.
But little by little, some of that stuff lifted, heart, all the soul and mental stuff got aligned, and then it kicked into gear. And
Wow.
I can rely on that a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
of like, okay, I need to start doing the right things because sometimes it's contributed to feeling like, woe is me,
Yeah.
So getting back to like, okay, I know what to do: sleep, exercise, nutrition.
Oh
Let's
my
get those things
gosh.
on
Oh
point,
my gosh. Yeah.
and then it's those little things
And
that
they create like milestones for you
they
that
do.
create like it's like your own like I don't know, you're kind of pulling yourself through the tunnel. Like
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
a handhold.
And it's like nobody can control me, right? When I feel out of control externally, when decisions are being made about me and for me and all this stuff, um, I can go to bed on time
Mm,
and get a solid
right.
7, 8 hours of sleep.
Right.
Nobody can take that away from me. I only
Right.
surrender that.
Uh,
Nobody can
uh,
force me to eat or not to eat. I can fast, which is healthy.
yeah.
I can have good, proper diet.
Yeah.
I can make the choice to show up. Nobody's going to make that choice for me,
Yep.
but that's my point of control. I can do that and
That's
I can
good.
better myself.
That's
So,
really good.
yeah.
Man, that yeah, the milestone thing I think is so good because I think like for me, it's been a lot of letting go. Like I told you, like
Yeah.
adjust expectations.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
maybe you need to, and it like for me that there was like a lot of freedom in that. Just being like, well, sweetheart,
Yeah.
you thought that it was going to be easy and it's not, and you
Right.
thought this, and it was like just kind of being like a little bit of a kind but tough coach for
Right.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and the mindset piece for me is really big. But I remember like at these different points where there's been disruption or turbulence in my life or our lives, I was like very much seeking progress as well. And
Right.
so like
Right.
that's where I've noticed I tend to be like, oh, I'm gonna work on like this big project in the
Yeah.
house. Like I re-landscaped the yard,
Yeah. Yeah.
redid the bathroom,
Right.
like stuff like that. And it's like, look at that.
Yeah.
I remember it was like, wow, in this situation that's hard, um, I just made something beautiful,
Yeah.
right? Like
Right.
I took this energy, this sort of anxious,
Mm-hmm.
energy, and
That's
I
good.
like created something.
That's good.
And it was like, and it still, continues to be a benefit that
Yeah.
I'm so
Right.
grateful for that
Right.
like I took, part of the yard that was just like kind of gruesome and like had just
It
wouldn't
had a lot of
budge.
trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was like, hey, let's just like adapt,
Yeah. Yeah.
and make this thing good. And it was kind of like a metaphor, in a
Yeah.
lot of ways
Yeah.
of just like, hey, this is an ugly part of our yard that doesn't like do what we want it to do. So let's make it do something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And let's make it like look good. Let's
Right.
make it beautiful. Let's make it a place that we can like inhabit. And I think like we're doing that in our souls, we're doing
Yeah.
that in our
Right.
lives. And sometimes it's just like that acceptance of like, okay, this is not working out.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna
Yeah.
do for me, like acceptance has been really, really big. But I think the milestones thing is so good to like install those structures in
Yeah.
your way
Yeah.
to be like, okay, I did this and that's an achievement. And I took control of what I can
That's
because
right.
I definitely lock into the powerlessness narrative, which I always like I've had to say to myself, if you believe you have no power, that's an automatic lie. Like you
Yeah.
always have power.
Mhm.
But where is your power? It's not
Right.
about if you have it, it's where is it?
Right. Yeah.
What
That's
kind of,
good.
and often it's over ourselves and our reactions or like the actions that we take. Um, but really, uncertainty and being in the middle does create a sense of powerlessness when you're like, okay, I've taken this as far as I can, and now I'm waiting on
Yeah.
an answer. I'm waiting on results. I'm waiting on, um, someone to call me back about the job or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like, when you have taken the ball as far down the field as you think you can, and you're
Right.
just like, okay, now what? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that is super challenging. So being able to be like, okay, I'm not going to just sit here. I'm going to create
Right.
these milestones for
Right.
myself that I can just be like, I'm going to, maybe it's just simply like I went for a walk 5 days and so it's like a routine
Yeah.
and a milestone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes,
Yeah.
that's really good. I think I'll probably even like need to implement more of that because I sometimes am not, I don't know, sometimes I'm like reluctant to have those milestones because I can get discouraged. Like, oh, I didn't meet that. And then I'm like,
Right.
like
Right. Yeah.
toss it out.
I think
I don't
sometimes you
know.
just need a win.
Yeah,
You need a small
totally.
victory. I don't know when I'm going to get out of this big hurdle, but I can get over this little one,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, so
That's really good. I love that. I was just gonna say also, like, kind of as a, supplementary thought, like, I think that being in the middle is, of course, like our state in life. It's the human condition, right? We're always in the middle of something. And there's like, again, the belief that you will have resolve is not maybe real. like you said, take heart.
Yeah.
Like this is the path of the sojourner, the person who makes an impact, right?
Right. Right.
The person who leaves a legacy, as we all like become interested in doing.
Yeah.
But I think that like one of the things I notice, and I'm trying to like be like, no, I want to ask better questions. When someone graduates from high school or college, right? Like some of our friends or people in their community, or
Yeah.
like someone's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm leaving my job, or I lost my job, or like, okay, we're having this baby, and then I'm not sure if I'm going to return to work, or we might move, or whatever. The question you always ask is like, what's next for you?
Right.
Like,
Right.
what are you going to do after that? And or like if someone gets married, then people are talking about when you're going to buy your first house, or when you're going to have a baby. And it's people are just obsessed with progress.
Right.
And in it, and there's like a, I was just thinking of the phrase like the human onboarding sheet. Like when you start a new job, you're like, okay, these are all the things you have to do. And you're like talking about repeating those. Like
Mhm.
sometimes you end up repeating the onboarding.
Right.
And it's like part of the onboarding is like, that we think is like, okay, you went to high school, then you got a job and or went to college, got a job.
Yeah.
You met your spouse, you bought a house, you got a dog, you had a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you checking your human onboarding sheet, like, oh, boop, 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 boop. I'm doing all these things. And it's like, this sort of like package deal. So like if you skip one, if you miss one, if you are waiting on one that you like are doing what you can, but you can't get there, you don't know, like
Mm.
housing market sucks right now, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Right.
You feel like people ask you, they ask you at your, and it's so, I remember like having to script my responses to family questions, like at different points where it felt like, oh, I'm going to get asked that same question a
Yep.
lot. And
Yeah.
it makes me uncomfortable every time.
Right.
And I don't want to just be like self-deprecating. I don't want to lie about it.
Right.
So what am I going to do? And I would
Right.
have to like prepare an answer
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it gave me anxiety, and it
Sure.
gives them anxiety
Yeah.
to see me be unresolved. And I can feel that I'm sort of managing their
Right.
anxiety. And
Right.
again, it's that expectation
Right.
that, oh, sure, honey, someday you'll get a job, someday it'll resolve, someday you'll get pregnant, someday you'll find a spouse. And you're like,
Yeah.
well, I could find a spouse, but they could be like a terrible person.
Right.
And then maybe it takes us 10 years to have a baby.
That's not the
Or
ultimate goal. It's just to do the thing, it's to actually like flourish in the midst of it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it's like you might might take a long time, or as soon as you get it, there's another thing.
Right.
I remember when we got married, people were like asking us right away, like, when are you gonna have a baby? And I was like, good God, we just got married. Like, can we just have a minute? Like, why are you moving to the next thing on the onboarding sheet? Like, we did everything at once. Like we,
Yeah.
bought
Yeah.
the house, the dog, and got pregnant
Yeah.
like within
Yeah.
2 months.
Yeah. It's intense.
So we like
It's good.
saved it up, checked a bunch of boxes. But anyways, the point is like the obsession with progress is like, it is a cultural thing. It is American.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's okay to be like,
Is
I'm
it
not gonna
is
do
it
that.
obsession with progress, or is it just kind of invasive questioning?
Well,
I don't know.
it's a question, but I mean, people are curious, they
It's like
want to
just
know. But
yeah.
I ask that, I'm like, oh, like I'm
Yeah.
curious about what they're gonna do next. Like,
Sure.
what's over the horizon for you? And I've had to be like, just ask a more curious question, like a broad
Right.
question.
More open-ended instead of like,
What's the transition
yeah.
been like for you?
Yeah,
Or
that's
what
good.
are you loving about this freedom that you have right now?
Maybe see if they want to talk about it instead of
Well,
just
yeah.
kind of like probing for what.
It's so automatic that the what's next
Oh, sure.
question is
Oh,
so
sure.
automatic.
Yeah.
I have to be like, no, I'm not asking that. So I just want to be like a better question asker.
Yeah.
And I think like,
It's good.
anyways, so yeah, I call it obsession with progress. I mean, we call it whatever we want, but I just think that's part of what makes in the middle excruciating for
Yeah.
the person
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everyone around them.
What's next? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
It's good.
so just tolerating it better through expectations. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious.
Uh-huh.
What's one thing you're watching, listening, what watching, reading, or listening to?
Yeah. I mean, like I'm so not good at like I don't watch a lot of TV. So we do need to get caught up on the latest Only Murders in
Yeah.
the Building.
It's
But
true.
yeah, I mostly am just like reading things that I think that are like the most interesting, to be honest. But I started reading this article. It's like kind of a journalistic in-depth look from Wired magazine about copper and how like the industry is like the clean energy industry has like dirty secrets, right? And I
yeah,
think like there's been tons of that lithium,
yeah,
cobalt mining in Africa, like
yeah,
just stuff like that. And I always find that so interesting because when a lot of money goes towards something, there's like always corruption. It's like, oh, there's billions of dollars invested in this. And I just think that's
yeah,
interesting. And I want
yeah,
to know about it. And I want to like understand the philosophical complexities of like,
yeah,
oh, we're solving the carbon footprint
right.
with all this other
Yeah,
terrible stuff.
yeah.
And what do we do about that? And just to like be aware and wrestle with it. So
Interesting.
yeah, I haven't finished it yet, but
Mm.
yeah, that's something that I'm working through. So
All
yeah.
right.
What about you? What do you
Rings of Power, season 2. Rings of Power.
Yeah, Rings of Power.
Good.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
It's better than season 1 so far. So enjoying the the world building and storytelling and character development.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that the bad guy like on the marketing material, he looks like he's an elf or something, or what do they call it?
Yeah, that's who I'm thinking.
He's like blonde with like the hair.
Yeah, there's a couple bad guys. So
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
yep.
yeah.
So
He looks like someone from one of the original like Lord of the Rings.
oh, okay.
That's like a good guy, but I can't remember his name. It was like the one that was played by Orlando Bloom.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, he was super cool in that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, and then he has like the evil eyes and on the thing, and I'm like, oh, he looks extra bad.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm not watching that.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
just gonna assume that he's a bad
He's a
guy.
bad guy. Yeah.
And I'm like, they're like the front face of this is a bad guy. I was like,
Mhm.
that's interesting.
Hmm.
Because normally it's like a hero.
I don't know that I've seen it, so I don't
Okay,
know.
well,
I
anyway.
have to look at it. So,
Okay. Yep.
yeah.
Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just
I
reading
just
fake.
they released the episodes and I jumped right in, so didn't even.
Yeah, of course you did.
So
Of course you did. That's awesome.
yeah.
Okay,
Good.
well, what's saving your butt right now?
Oh, come back to me. I don't have
Come
to
back
think
to you. Oh
about
my
it.
gosh, that's funny.
How about you?
But well, like I've had to start drinking tea instead of coffee in the mornings, which I don't know if this is just like, being midlife or whatever. I still drink coffee, but more recently I've been drinking the Tulsi leaf tea, which is
Okay.
like it's kind of just is more calming. And I've
Yeah.
been making my own blend
Yeah.
with like rose petals, like from Ellen's Planted
Yeah.
Tea.
Okay.
And it's so nice.
Good.
I mean, like I love coffee and I just want to drink coffee in the morning, but I'm like, I'm listening to myself and I'm like, you need
Yeah.
tea. And so we're
Yeah.
drinking tea. This
Okay.
is tea,
Well,
a special
I'll
blend.
still cheers it.
Oh,
That's definitely on my coffee.
thank
Oh,
you.
so something
Yeah.
saving my butt.
Yeah.
The sauna at the gym.
Oh my gosh.
I've
Really?
done it a lot before, but I'm looking and realizing more of the health benefits, and it's just good for your cardiovascular health and longevity. And so
Wow.
I just tack on a 15-minute session every time after
Oh
I
my
lift.
gosh. We
So
have
really good.
really amazing, like therapeutic red lights on at work.
Oh yeah, you gotta do
At
that.
the office. And, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, I'm in and out,
Yeah,
but I really need to
yeah,
start doing that. So
good.
that's good.
All right,
I can
yeah.
report back.
Okay, do it.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
Well, thanks for joining us today on In the Middle, and we'll see you next time.
yeah. See you next time. This is the In the Middle podcast with Josh and Sarah Siders. Visit inthemiddlecoaching.co for other resources, courses, and helpful tools.